I'm Dr. Astar, professor of economics and teacher of meditation. And I wanted to talk this week. I do this class every week. It's an introduction to heart rhythm meditation. And I wanted to talk this week about burnout because I think a lot of us are dealing with that after a year of COVID-19 and quarantine and emerging into the world and whatever. I mean, it's something I'm definitely dealing with myself. So I wanted to talk about, how meditation can help with that. Um, so heart rhythm meditation, just say a little bit about this. This is a method of meditation that comes out of Sufism. Sufism is the esoteric tradition of Islam. Uh, the Sufi order that I grew up in is very universalist. It's more of a philosophical type of school than it is a religion. Um, in fact, I grew up Jewish, so and being a Jewish Sufi is not that uncommon, right? That despite what one might think. So our meditation really focus a lot on the breath, and we want to really develop the breath, make the breath optimal. And what we mean by that is five things. We mean to make the breath deep so that when you breathe in, you're breathing in and your belly is expanding. Okay, so deep in the sense of deep in your body, right? A lot of times we breathe up in our chests. Because this is what your body tends to do when you're under stress. Um, you tighten up your abdominal muscles, um, and the breathing it becomes constricted and is limited to the chest. This is called thoracic breathing. So if you breathe deeply, that is abdominal breathing or diaphragmatic breathing, it sends the exact opposite signal to your body and to your mind, which is relax, right? Your heart rate can slow down, your blood pressure can fall. And these are all physiological responses. They're very well documented. It's been called the relaxation response. So, when we're meditating, we want our physiological response to go with that, right? And not to be fighting against it, right? We don't want to be physically stressed while we're trying to mentally and emotionally and spiritually relax and open ourselves to the entire experience of our being that we often miss because we're too stressed, right? Um, all right, so deep breathing, very, very important. All right. Now, to practice that, I suggest just taking a hand and putting it on your belly, right? And feeling that rise and fall as you breathe, right? Might even take two hands and just rest them on your belly, right? So let's try that out just to kind of prime ourselves for the we're going to do more, but let's just start with this, all right? So sit up straight and put one or both hands on your belly and just breathe and feel your belly expanding as you breathe in and contracting as you breathe out. Just take a few breaths, allowing your belly to soften and to open to the breath. And what you might notice happening is that when you breathe deeply, your energy starts to settle down. One of the things that we do, I mean, a kind of habitual pattern is that our energy is like up here, right? I mean, a lot of us, right? We have to use our minds a lot, right? I mean, to get through life has, especially modern life, is a pretty big mental drain, Um, and so we're always up here, right? Always thinking, worrying, right? Strategizing. So when we breathe deeply, our energy can settle, okay? Because the breath and energy are deeply connected, right? The breath is our fundamental connection to life, right? So, as the Sufis say, breath is life. So, the way that we breathe affects us very, very deeply, right? Breathing deeply is a natural thing that will happen. It'll happen if you sit for a long time. It's hard to maintain this, tight, constricted upper thoracic breathing. You will naturally start to breathe deeply. So, all I'm asking you to do here is just to pay attention and do that consciously so that when you sit down to meditate, you can have an easier time of it, right? Rather than taking you a long time to settle down, you might find yourself settling down right away or much more quickly. Okay. So if all you take away, I'm going to give you a bunch of techniques tonight, but if all you take away is that one, then I'm happy, right? Because it's a good one, a hand on the belly, very soothing, breathing deeply. All right. The next intervention that we want to make, like I said, there's 5 things we emphasize, heart rhythm meditation. The next thing I want to emphasize is to make the breath slow, right? Normally we breathe shallowly and rapidly, maybe taking 22 breaths a minute, something like that. Maybe more, maybe 25. So, a breath every 2 or 3 seconds. Um, and that puts the breath is a very fundamental rhythm of your body and your mind. So when your breath is at that pace, your rhythm is at that pace, right? So by slowing down the rhythm of the breath, we're going to slow ourselves down physically, again, aiding that relaxation response that we're trying to trigger, right? And also having a very positive effect on our thoughts and our feelings even, right? So what we know is that, I mean, just by experience, anxiety and stress are associated with thoughts that are rapidly moving from one thing to the next. Okay. And there's often a kind of a loop that you get trapped in, right? Isn't there? I mean, where you think about something and you worry about it, and then okay, it connects to this, and you circle around. Oh, let me try to think of a solution, and you're sort of just trapped in this worry loop, right? Um, so rather than saying, "Oh, you stop yourself from doing that," right? We're saying let's approach this a little more indirectly. Let's just try to slow it down. You know, I mean, if it were so easy to stop, I would say that, right? Like if it was helpful for somebody to tell you stop doing that, it's not that helpful, right? Um, so instead, I'm saying just focus on your breathing, right? Make your breathing deep, and then make it slower, okay? And just see what happens, right? See what happens. Um, my experience is that it makes a big difference. It it really slows you down. You can settle in. All right. How do you make your breath slower? Well, you breathe out a little bit more than you're used to breathing, right? Because one of the reasons that it's rapid is because we're using only a little bit. Like if this is our lung capacity, we only do like a little bit in the middle, right? We never breathe all the way out, and we never really breathe all the way in unless we're under, extreme duress or something, right? Diving down, holding our breath or whatever, We just breathe a little tiny bit. So breathe a little bit more, right? Control your breath so that you're breathing more slowly, right? I think if you pay attention to this, you'll find it pretty easy to do. All right. Um, you just have to maintain that concentration. Now, this is also very valuable, okay? Because by having an intervention on your breath, by trying to change your breath, you also have a built-in feedback mechanism, okay? Because one of the things that's difficult about meditation is, am I doing this right? Is it working, right? So uh, let's try this second one out, okay? So a hand on the belly, and we sit up straight, and we're just going to try breathing at a slower rhythm than you normally do. Okay. I didn't say to do that initially, but now we're adding something. Okay. Deep and slow. So close your eyes, feel yourself breathing. Breathe out a little bit more than you normally do. Breathe in a little bit more than you normally do. Breathe a little bit more slowly. Now, your intention matters quite a bit. So, you're sitting now with a certain intention, which is going to pay attention to my breath. I'm changing my breath to make it optimal, right? Deep and slow. All right. So, the next intervention that we want to do is a little bit more involved. Okay. We want our breath to be rhythmic, and we also want it to be heart centered. So, what does this mean, right? Rhythmic means it has a repeated pattern, right? And we want that pattern to be of a certain kind, okay? That is, we want the inhalation and the exhalation to be equal in length and therefore equal in intensity as well, right? Because, you're using a certain proportion of your lungs here. So if the out breath takes a certain period of time, the in breath takes the same period of time, then they have to also be the same intensity, okay? Now, and by intensity, I mean the same volume of air, per unit of time, right? That travels through your, nose or mouth, however you're breathing, right? So this is, it turns out, not necessarily how we normally breathe, right? We normally breathe in a way that is kind of unbalanced, okay? So that, or at least it's quite common for our inhalation or our exhalation to be longer. And that means the other side has to be, more, has to have a greater flow, right? Because in order to, that's what's necessary, right? In order to make the same volume. So we're going to really focus on making our breath have an even rhythm. Okay. Now, this is important for several reasons. Okay. It's important for us spiritually. Okay. Because spiritually, our hearts are always giving energy, right? Our hearts are always, we're always expressing ourselves, whether we speak or not, we come into a room and we fill that room with a certain energy. We know this, right? Because, you ever have somebody come into a room, they don't say anything, but the vibe changes. Why? Well, because they brought their vibe with them, right? Obviously. And we feel it, on some level. Person who's really upset, you feel that. Or a person who's really happy, you feel that too, right? Um, usually they say something or whatever, so we have other signals too. But even if they don't, you we our hearts are always expressing energy. They're always spreading their vibration to other hearts around, right? I mean, that's the nature of it. So we want our expression to be balanced by what we receive, right? We are also always receiving. That's how we can tell, right? When that's how we feel other people's vibes, right? That we receive their energy. So what we want is we want a balance there, right? We want the energy that radiates from us, right? The energy that we give to be balanced by the energy that we receive, right? So the theme that I'm talking about in this class, burnout, right? That is when our expression is greater on average, right, than what we receive, right? And then we get depleted. And it's easy to do this. It's easy to have it happen. So we want to really focus on our breath and making that an even, smooth rhythm. Okay, so deep, slow, rhythmic. Okay, now how do we know that it's rhythmic? Right, it's so important. How do we know? Oh, there's other reasons, by the way, that it's important. Rhythmic breathing, it turns out, is very good for your actual physical heart. And we can tell this using something called heart rate variability. Okay. Heart rate variability is the beat to beat variation in your heart rate. So, your heart rate, it turns out, even if you're sitting still, you're doing your meditation, whatever, You're sitting still, your heart rate is going to be fairly constant on average. Okay. So that means like if your resting heart rate is like 70 or something, right? 70 beats per minute, it's probably going to be fairly stable, for the whole time that you're sitting. But if we zoom in on it, right, and we look at the length of time between each beat, well, that changes a lot. Okay. That's what heart rate variability is. Because your heart, it turns out, is always trying to figure out, should I be speeding up right now or should I be slowing down right now? And your heart actually has neural cells. Your heart has brain cells in it, right, to help it figure this out. Um, and it does it very, very quickly. Okay. And what triggers changes in the heart rate? Well, any kind of external stimulus causes changes in the heart rate. Okay. So if you see something that you think might be dangerous, your heart rate will very quickly speed up, right? Now, you might not notice that because it might speed up uh, just for a few beats, right? That is, the time between those beats is much shorter. It's like that saying, my heart skipped a beat, except it's kind of the opposite of that, but you get the idea, right? Like, you, um, your heart is very, very tuned in, right, to changes in the environment because your heart has to gear up, right? I mean, if there's danger, your heart rate has to increase. You need more energy. You need adrenaline. You need all these things that keep you alive, right? So, but if your heart's going at 180 beats a minute all the time, you're probably going to die soon, right? Um, you need also to slow down when the danger is past. When that's not going on. So our heart has both of this, right? When is it safe? When is it time to relax? And when is it time to gear up and enter a state of physiological arousal, right? Um, the fight or flight response, one of them, right? There's a third F in there, but I'll leave that to your imagination, right? And then there's the relax and chill response. Okay, so your heart is constantly trying to figure out, what is this, right? And in one cycle of breath, your heart is going to be speeding up and slowing down. And the amazing thing is that if you breathe rhythmically, your heart slows down and speeds up in a predictable wave-like pattern. Right? Quite beautiful to observe, like a wave like this, right? A sine wave type of thing. So, and it turns out this pattern is very good for you physically. Heart rate variability is a major predictor of mortality. Okay, so if it's low, that's bad, right? If it's high of good heart rate variability, that signals that your heart is healthy. We want a heart that is responsive to inner and outer conditions. Okay, so I made it sound like your heart is speeding up and slowing down only in response to outer things. That's true, but it's also the case that your heart is doing this in response to inner conditions. Your heart actually doesn't really see the difference between seeing an actual tiger and thinking of a tiger, right? Your heart responds to stressful thoughts in exactly the same way that it responds to, dangerous situations, right? So, very interesting, right? That is, we know that if a person is just asked to think about something stressful, okay, their heart responds to it almost immediately, right? So we want our breath to be more powerful than on ourselves, right? On our bodies and on our minds than our thoughts are, right? That is, we want our heart to be having a powerfully healthy rhythm, even if our thoughts are anxious, because we can't totally control what our thoughts are doing, right? I mean, we all know this. Try not to think about something, you're still going to think about it, right? Um, so I'm not going to tell you guys have no thoughts. I'm not going to tell you don't stop thinking about that. Don't do that, right? What I'm telling you is work on your breath, right? And let your thoughts take care of themselves. And notice though, your thoughts will change their character. Okay. If you do this breathing, now it's a skill like anything else. So you have to learn it, right? And if you do this style of breathing, it has a huge impact, right? It's not going to stop you from thinking, but it is going to break the cycle where your thoughts get more anxious, and then it causes a physiological stress response, and then et cetera, right? That's a negative feedback loop that we want to break. Okay, so very important for your breath to be rhythmic. Okay, now there's another part of it that we want to add, which is make your breath heart centered. Okay, so I've been talking about this feeling that your heart is what is taking in the breath. Okay, because breath is energy. Your heart is taking in energy, and your heart is expanding and radiating energy all around. Okay, in fact, to the whole universe, right? Because our electromagnetic fields, we have electromagnetic fields as a consequence of being in the larger electromagnetic field of the Earth, and as conductors, right? Our Believe it or not, we're conductors, right? On a very small level, our spines conduct conduct very small amounts of electricity, right? So a conductor that's in an electromagnetic field has an electromagnetic field of its own, and electromagnetic fields go on forever. So it is literally the case, right? By one kind of energy that we can measure, electromagnetism, that the human being's energy is unbounded, right? That literally true. So uh, all right, that's right. We're all connected, right? That's a reality that we feel, right? Otherwise, we would not be able to. There wouldn't be any sense of somebody else's vibe, right? We do feel that. Um, so we want our energy of our breath to be connected to our hearts, right? To be energizing our hearts. Um, so, how do we do that, right? How do we make our breath rhythmic? And how do we make it heart centered? Well, we have same technique that works for both of them, which is to count the beats of the heart. Okay. Now it's a little bit challenging because we're not necessarily used to feeling our heartbeat. Okay. So we have certain tricks for it, we have certain techniques for it, right? One technique is to take one or both of your hands and just place them on your heart. Okay. Now, this might not necessarily be what you're used to. We don't tend to sit like this all that often, right? And you can choose which one you want on the outside, which one's on the inside. If you like, you could just do one. You have different options, right? Well, let's just try this, okay? Let's sit here and take a few breaths while focusing on your heart. Okay, making your breath deep, making your breath slow, and if you can, tune into your heartbeat and breathe in the same number of beats as you breathe out. It may be that having your hands on your heart helps you to feel your heartbeat. If it's not enough, you can press with your fingertips. You might then feel the pulse in your fingertips. You just kind of maintain a light pressure against your breastbone. Now pay attention to that beat. If you don't feel every single beat, that's okay. You just fill it in with your mind. All right. Maybe you just feel one or two of them. And use your imagination, right? Imagine that same rhythm continues. It is common to have difficulty feeling the heart rate. About half the people I teach can feel it, about half cannot. So if you can't feel it, you're not alone. But everyone feels it eventually, right? Everyone can tune into it. You can learn to sense your heart rate, right? If this technique is not working for you, you can put the palm on the hand and hook the other hand around and feel your own wrist. Put a little pressure on this hand that's hooked around, You might be able to feel your pulse that way, right? Same number of beats on the inhalation as you do on the exhalation. Feel that your heart is receiving energy as you breathe in. You are being replenished, revitalized, filled with inspiration. Isn't it interesting that inspiration is another word? It's a synonym for breathing in, right? Your heart gets filled with inspiration, right? Physically, emotionally, spiritually, as you breathe in. And as you breathe out, you radiate the energy of your heart all around in all directions, throughout your body, throughout your mind, throughout your spirit, and outside of yourself as well. You may feel yourself connected to those you love, to the places that you care about, the places that sustain you, that you treasure, the activities, the kinds of energy. Paying attention to your heartbeat gives you something to focus on as well. You might even think it's kind of an advantage if you have a hard time feeling it because, well, then it gives you something to do, right? If I tell you just sit here and think about nothing, that's very difficult, right? Our minds want to have a task. Our minds want to have something to do. So you're giving your mind something to focus on, something to do that is very beneficial, right? Not focus on your worries and anxieties and your things that overwhelm you and whatever, right? Not that. Focus on something simple. Feeling your breath, feeling your heartbeat. Something that is deeply healthy and nourishing for yourself. All right. So, this issue of rhythm and what happens when we get off rhythm, what happens when we get depleted, when we get burned out. What are the signs of that? What does that even mean, right? Well, I can say for myself, I notice it when I feel exhausted, when I feel overwhelmed. And how do I know that that's happening? I often feel it because I stop wanting to do lots and lots of things, right? Um, like I don't want to do anything, even things that I enjoy, um, even things that I find relaxing, even things that I find rejuvenating. I don't want to do them. Why is that? Well, I don't know exactly. I think it's because I don't even want to know the extent of how depleted I am, right? If I do something that is relaxing or something that I enjoy, I might start to realize, oh my God, I spend a lot of time doing stuff I don't necessarily enjoy or stuff that makes me feel stressed, right? Um, and it's often the case that we get kind of trapped by this, right? Like we take on responsibilities. Um, and then, that's the nature of a responsibility. That's what it is, right? It's a duty. You have to meet it, whether you feel like it or not, right? Um, and this can creep up on us. We can start having lots of responsibilities, lots of things that we're responsible for. Um, and it's easy to do because why do we take on responsibility? Um, well, it often comes along with control, right? Comes along with power. Um, As Spider-Man's Uncle Ben always said, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And then vice versa is also true, right? With responsibility comes power. If someone gives you responsibility and doesn't give you power, you should probably turn it down, because it's like, well, you need them to go together. Otherwise, you can't do anything with the responsibility that you have, right? Um, so, however, right, the problem with so responsibility's got its benefits, but it's also quite draining, right? I mean, it obligates you to pay attention to something. Um, so, right. Um, those are I think some of the signs, right? Um, maybe you want to. I mean, I have like other things I could share, but it's more like think about it for yourself, right? What are the signs that you notice when you feel burned out, right? How do you know? Um, Now, meditation is a very good way of doing two things. Okay, one thing is tuning into yourself and feeling, where am I at right now, right? Just kind of overall. Okay, where am I at emotionally? Where am I at mentally? How do I feel physically? What's my energy like overall, right? What is my overall emotional space, right? Apart from whatever I might be feeling at this particular moment, right? So to listen, to sit down and have a meditation where you just listen to yourself. Very, very powerful, right? Now, we think of that as something passive. If you listen, you're not doing anything, right? Well, you are though, because you are you're receiving the signal, right? A lot of times we send one part of ourselves sends a signal to another part, right? It says, hey, this is something you need to pay attention to, this is something you need to be aware of, right? And a lot of times we don't listen, you know and so that signal gets sent in some other way, right? Like maybe it's a physical thing, right? you know you have your back is aching, but you ignore it, you don't have time for it, right? And so maybe your back goes out, really gets your attention, right? Oh my God, I laid up, I can't get out of bed. So, right, by listening, we receive the message, right? We receive that signal. And then sometimes things don't have to get worse. Things don't have to become more pronounced, right? Because we've already heard it, we've gotten it, right? Sometimes that causes a shift. Not always, but sometimes. Okay. Listening and accepting, being open, right? That can be incredibly powerful. Okay. So that's one thing that we can do in meditation. We can, and here's a way. Let me give you something practical, right? If that appeals to you, right? If you think, yeah, I really need to just tune in to myself. I need to just know what is going on, right? Because that can often be the first step, right? Maybe you already know, and so that's not relevant. But if it is, right, how do you do it? Well, you focus more on the inhalation. Okay, the inhalation is the receiving part. All right, the receiving part. Exhalation is the giving part. Okay, so focus on the inhalation. Let's try this out. All right, so we want to do all of these elements of the breathing that I've mentioned so far. Okay, so deep, slow, rhythmic, heart centered. All right, and just so you sit up straight, tune in to your breathing with the intention of listening to yourself on every level. Say to yourself, whatever I am feeling, whatever I'm experiencing, whatever thoughts and feelings I have are all important. They're all part of this message that is being sent from one part of myself to another part, right? from my subconscious or unconscious to my conscious mind. This can help a lot with burnout because one thing that sometimes happens, sometimes it makes us burned out, is that we don't want to know. Why don't we, that message that is being sent from our subconscious or unconscious, like we don't want to know what it is. We resist it, and the resistance is exhausting. So we're saying, let me just take a few moments and not resist. Whatever it is, I'd like to know what it is. I'd like to feel it. Okay. Now you might already know what it is on some level. You might know intellectually, but sometimes knowing is not enough. You have to feel. You have to enter the experience. Right. This is often the way with grief. We know we're grieving. We know we're sad, but we don't allow ourselves to really feel it, to fully embrace, fully enter that experience. So we resist it, and that resistance is, it's can burn us out. All right. The second thing that meditation can do, right? So if the first thing is listening, accepting, understanding where you're at, experiencing that, right? Embracing. The second thing is changing it. So this is where having a strong, powerful breath, a well developed breath, right, in the manner that I've described, is going to really be helpful. And there's one additional piece to that, which I haven't yet talked about this class, which is making your breath bigger, fuller, more powerful. Okay. So that's the fifth element. Okay. Making it so, first of all, deep, right? Slow, rhythmic, heart centered, and then making your breath full. Okay. Full breath is a skill, it takes time to learn. But the basic way you're going to do it is by breathing out much harder than you normally do. Uh, so when I introduced breathing slow, I said, well, you breathe out a little bit more, breathe in a little bit more. Okay. So now go a lot further with that. Breathe out, not a little bit more, a lot more. Vacuum seal your, your squeeze your abdominal muscles. Feel like your belly is getting close to your spine as you breathe out, right? Breathe all the air out. Now we resist doing this. We don't want to do this. There's a physiological fear reaction that happens when you breathe all the way out. Because breathing all the way out means you're expelling your reserves of air, the residual volume, as it's called, of air that you carry around with you all the time. Uh, Breathe all the way out, and you're giving that away. But what's the reward? Well, the reward is you can breathe in fresh, new air, fresh breath, right? By carrying around a residual volume, you never replenish that, you never exchange that, right? So breathing all the way out is tremendously clarifying. It's tremendously cleansing, right? That's how it feels to do, right, as an experience. So even though it causes some fear to do it, to even get close to it. Now, there is a certain volume that we cannot voluntarily expel just physically because, the way our lungs work, by muscular action, we compress, okay? And then air, we're making the volume a little bit smaller, right? Um, and then we expand, right? And expanding the muscles that are all around the lungs and the diaphragm causes a partial vacuum, and that draws in air, right? So the muscular action here, right, of us changing the shape of our trunk, basically, right? Our this part of our torso. Um, that is what the mechanism of breathing is, right, on a physical level. Um, so we're just trying to do that bigger than we normally do. Um, we can do this. This is totally under our control. It's just that we're not used to doing it repeatedly, right? So if you learn to swim or dive or whatever, you say, hold your breath, do this. Right? You're learning, well, what are the muscles that can allow me that come into play, right? To allow me to take a big breath. So, but we don't want to do this for meditating, right? We don't want to go, or we don't want to do that because that's not meditative, right? That's going to trigger your body's stress response. Okay. So we want to do, this is why I'm mentioning it last. We want to do all of these things together. Okay. Slow breath, right? We want the breath to be rhythmic still. Okay. We want it to be heart centered. Okay. We want it to be very smooth and even, have an even rhythm, all this. Okay. Now, breathing really fully does force us to not always breathe deeply. Or let me say it, to say it differently, we're going to be doing a combination of diaphragmatic breathing, that is belly breathing, and thoracic breathing. Okay. To draw all the air in is going to require that you expand your chest. Okay. Um, so you breathe all the way out, right? Contract all of those intercostal muscles and all of the muscles in your upper body, your well, that relate to breathing. Um, then you're going to contract and compress your abdominal muscles. Really squeeze your abdominal muscles. Right, as you squeeze your abdominal muscles, your diaphragm does this, right. So it bends a little bit upwards. Uh, as you relax them and allow them to expand, your diaphragm does opposite. Okay, diaphragm is this muscular piece of muscle that you have, right? Um, so that is partly under your control, right? Your abdominal muscles are what's under your control. The diaphragm is, um, indirectly under your control, right? We know because when the diaphragm gets a kind of contraction in it, a repeated contraction, it can be a little hard to get rid of, right? It's called hiccups. That's a contraction of your diaphragm. So, and usually the way you get rid of it is by breathing, right? By breathing rhythmically. So, relaxing that part of the breathing system. Okay. So the point of developing a full breath is that it gives you much more energy. It gives you much more power, right? Why do we need that power? Well, it can be difficult to break through your patterns. Fear can come up, right? And does come up all the time in meditation. Um, you need courage to confront that. You need energy, right? Or you feel burned out and overwhelmed. You need new inspiration, right? Where do you get that from, right? Well, when your breath is bigger and more powerful, you get more energy, you get more inspiration, you get more replenishment, more revitalization, right? That's very important for when you feel burned out. Okay. So let's try this out. Let's practice adding this full breath to all of the other things that we've done so far. Now, I know it's a challenge, right? Um, all right. So take your upright posture. Tune into your breathing. Breathe all the way out on your exhalation. Really squeeze your abdominal muscles. It can be very helpful to take your hand and place it on your belly. Feel your belly contracting as you breathe all the way out. Place your other hand on your chest, right? Something very soothing about having one hand on your belly, One hand on your chest, you're self soothing, you're directing your attention because where your hands are placed, part of your attention is there, right? Placing your hands on your belly and on your heart means you're placing that part of your attention on your heart, right? On your breathing, on feeling what is happening, on trying to do this practice, learn this style of breathing, right? As you breathe in, you expand your belly, and then you expand your sides of your body. You expand your solar plexus. You expand your chest all the way up to your collarbone. And as you breathe out, then you breathe out all that air. Go much further than you think you can go. Keep the breath under control, right? Do not allow the breath to rush out or rush in. You want smooth, even movement all the way out and all the way in. Okay. When when you start to breathe out more, it's going to be very common, right? You're squeezing the abdominal muscles. You want to just let it rush all in, right? Got to control it on the inhalation as well. Okay. So that is the tension that you're applying to your abdominal muscles as you breathe out. You have to keep some of that tension as you turn around the breath and start to breathe in. You can't just relax, right? If you relax, okay, you breathe in, it won't be rhythmic, right? One side will take a lot longer, the other side will come really fast, and then you'll have a hard time getting, you'll have a hard time making it even, right? We want to keep that nice, even rhythm. We just want to make it more powerful, right? It requires more control. So we're pursuing two things that don't usually go together: power and subtlety, right? We want the breath to be subtle. We want it to be quiet. We want it to be smooth, okay? We also want it to be powerful, to be big, to carry us through, right? Having a big breath is like having a big ship. Why do we want a big ship? Well, because the sea of life is often stormy, right? Little boat, you don't want to go on that out in a storm, right? You're gonna get tossed around. A big ship has got a lot more mass, a lot more momentum, right? Carry you through more challenges, right? Sometimes we might feel that we do not deserve to take in all of this energy, all of this inspiration, all of this love, right? That's what the breath is, right? The breath is all these things. We often feel unworthy of it, right? I struggle with this issue many times in my life, feeling like, how do I deserve this incredible bounty? How do I deserve this? Oh, there's so many others that have so much less, right? Or, I'm not worthy. That's another common kind of experience. So sometimes we resist even the most wonderful things, right? Because we feel that we don't deserve them, we're not worthy of them, right? And then again, this can be a cause of burnout because we don't receive that replenishment, right? And meanwhile, we're always giving, right? Um, Very easy to do. So you might notice as you're breathing especially as you challenge yourself, especially as you try to breathe more fully, you might notice which is more difficult for you, right? Breathing all the way out and controlling that exhalation, breathing all the way in, right? Receiving that incredible energy, inspiration, and love. Which challenges you more, right? The giving side or the receiving side? Um, there's often we specialize, right? We have imbalances. Uh, we're often better at one of these kinds of energy than the other, and then it can be very, very helpful to know that and to redouble our efforts to be balanced, right? If we, if we, so I've spoken a lot about the dangers of giving too much, right? That's like having too much exhalation, not enough inhalation, right? Too much giving, not enough receiving. But the opposite is also a risk, right? Of receiving too much and not doing enough, right? Not expressing enough, not not taking enough risks, right? Um, Not putting our energy out there, not saying the thing that we want to say, right? Not connecting with the person that we want to connect with. Um, that might be more your area, right? That needs work. So how do we know, right? How do we know? Well, this is why paying attention to the breath is so incredibly powerful because the breath tells you, right? You can know just from this experience, well, what do you struggle with? And it's not just the breath part of it, right? It's the total experience. It's what thoughts come up, what feelings come up, what physical sensations come up in your body that goes along with this, right? Um, every single thing that you experience in meditation has some kind of meaning. It has some kind of significance, right? You might not understand it at the time. That's okay, right? Um, you take the attitude, I'm here to learn, I'm here to experience everything that there is within myself. And each one of us is a world, is a universe within us, right? So there's a tremendous amount to experience about our inner selves and our inner lives that most of the time we don't delve into, we don't explore, right? But we long to. We long to know ourselves, right? If we don't know ourselves, it's a very hard to know others, to know life, right? If we do know ourselves, then we know a lot, it turns out. Right? All right. So let's try it. Let's try it again. I have a song that I was thinking of. Maybe you know this one. It's an old Hebrew song. Uh, and the song is Hashi Venu. It means turn us back to you, O God. We will turn and renew ourselves as in the days past. Okay. So I'm just going to sing that song, right? Do your breathing while I sing this song. Okay. It goes like this. Hashi Venu, Hashi Venu, Adonai Elecha, Vena Shuva, Vena Shuva, Chodesh, Chodesh, Yamenu Kekidem. Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, Vena Shuva, Vena Hadesh, Hadesh, Yamenu Kekidel. Well, if you haven't heard that song before, look it up and find the lyrics. Very easy to find on Google. His Hebrew lyrics, but you can find them transliterated into English. And a song that has that, to me, has that kind of sense of, well, we've gotten a little bit lost from ourselves, and now it's time to return, to remember who we truly are, right? To remember that we have a divine nature, that we have an infinite part of ourselves, right? That we often miss, that we often overlook because we're so familiar with our limited self and we haven't explored our unlimited self, right? So, one of the purpose of meditation is to tune into that unlimited nature that we have. So I thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've benefited from the class. I'm here every week, 7 o'clock Pacific. If you'd like to support the class, I have a Patreon page. I put the link below. I'm very thankful to all my patrons who have supported my work. And I give all my patrons access to a step by step course in meditation that goes through in great detail and you learn each step. So if you're interested in that, check out the link. And I hope to see you all again next week. Thank you so much.